A young couple vanished. Immediately after their wedding in 1985, as if they had simply driven off into thin air with their brand new car. But 12 years. Later, university students analyzing old satellite images spot something shocking in the Everglades. A discovery that would lead investigators to a disturbing revelation no one saw coming. Morning sun cast long shadows across the Walmart parking lot in Homestead, Florida. Linda Carroll pushed her shopping cart through the produce section methodically. Selecting tomato sand, examining lettuce heads at 56, she developed a routine that helped fill empty spaces in her life, spaces that had gaped wide since that summer day in 1985. When her only daughter vanished, the shrill ring of her cell phone, still a relatively new possession in 1997, which she had won from the supermarket, lottery startled her from her thoughts. She fumbled in her purse, nearly dropping a bag of oranges in the process. Hello. Mrs. Carroll, this is Detective Jason Prom from the Homestead Police Department. I need to ask where you are right now. Linda's heart skipped in 12 years. She'd received countless calls that led nowhere, but something in the detective's tone made her grip the phone tighter. I'm at Walmart doing my grocery shopping. Why? What's happened? Mrs. Carroll, need you to come to Everglades National Park. Something related to your daughter Melissa and her husband. Brandon has just resurfaced. The words hit her like a physical blow. The phone nearly slipped from her suddenly. Nerveless fingers. What is it? What have you found? We've recovered the yellow Ford Thunderbird from the Everglades. We need you for identification purposes. We've also contacted the Whitmore family. Can you meet us at the park parking lot via main park? Bro, what's the car after all this time? Linda's voice cracked. I'll be there in 20 minutes without a second thought. Abandoned her half-filled cart in the middle of the aisle. Other shoppers stared as she rushed past, but Linda barely noticed her. Mind raced as she hurried to her aging Honda Civic, the 20 Ina drive to Everglades. National Park felt both endless and too brief as she navigated Main Park Road. Memories floated back, memories she tried so hard to reconcile over the years. Police had concluded that Melissa had left town voluntarily. Brandon, after their wedding, it was the unreasonable explanation. They could offer a grieving mother. She'd never believed it. Not really. Her daughter wouldn't abandon her. Not after everything. They'd been through together. Melissa knew what it meant to be raised by a single mother knew. The sacrifices Linda had made, but 12 years of silence had worn down. Ever in her stubborn hope, she'd begun to make a fragile peace with the idea that perhaps her daughter had chosen a new life over there. Old one now, with this discovery that carefully constructed piece crumbled. Like wet sand, the sight that greeted her at the park made her breath catch. Multiple police vehicles crowded the parking lot there, lights creating a kaleidoscope of red and blue against. The morning sky rescue authority vehicles added to the controlled chaos. Park rangers directed traffic while officers cordoned off sections with yellow tape. Linda parked hastily and stepped out. On unsteady legs, a crowd had gathered, park employees curious. Tourist officials in various uniforms, but her eyes were drawn to Theft Lab trailer at the center of it. All there it sat, the yellow Ford Thunderbird, streams of murky water still dripping. From its undercarriage, algae and mud caked its once pristine surface. And the windows were opaque with sediment, but even through 12 years of submersion recognized it. Gregory Whitmore had made such a production of gifting it to Brandon for their wedding, insisting on photos with the happy couple beside it. Mrs. Carroll, Detective Prem, approached his weathered face. Grave, he was younger than she expected from his phone voice, perhaps. Early 40s, with the kind of tired eyes that came from seeing. Too much human misery, Detective. She couldn't take her eyes off the car. How did you find it after all this time? Let me introduce you to some people who can explain better than I can. He led her to a cluster of young people in University of Miami shirts. They looked barely older than Melissa had been when she disappeared. A young man with sandy hair and earnest eyes stepped forward. Mrs. Carroll. I'm Jake Morrison. We environmental studies students working on a project about land transformation in the Everglades. We've been analyzing historical satellite imagery to track changes over the decades. He pulled out a folder and extracted a grainy photograph. We were studying land loss patterns when we noticed this anomaly in a 1985 satellite image. He pointed to a section of the photo where Linda could just make out a yellow shape. Partially visible in dark water when we enhanced and zoomed the image, we could clearly see it was a vehicle our professor recognized. It might be connected to the old missing persons case from that year. It was big news back then, so we calculated the coordinates and contacted the police detective. Prom took over the area where they spotted. It is remote enough to have avoided detection all these years, the water. Depth there is significant deep enough for a car to sink completely over time. It settled to the bottom. Recovery operation took 4 hours. The detective continued. The marine recovery team worked with Florida Fish and Wildlife and our department. We used sonar equipment and divers to confirm the car's exact position, then brought in a police boat to reach the location. A helicopter lifted it out and placed it on the flatbed for transport. Linda heard car door slam behind her. She turned to see the Whitmore family arriving, Gregory leading the way with this characteristic swagger. Despite his advancing years, Ella Linner following with her perpetual air of long-suffering dignity, and Daniel bringing up the rear. The years had changed them. All but she recognized them instantly. The old anger flared in her chest. She remembered their last interaction too well. Gregory's accusations, his insistence that her low-income daughter had led his precious in astray, as if love could be measured. By bank accounts, Detective Prom excused himself to brief the Whitmores. Linda watched Gregory's face as he examined the vehicle, saw the moment. Off recognition, despite his attempt at stoic control. Yes, that's the Thunderbird I bought Brandon as a wedding gift. Gregory confirmed, his voice carrying clearly across the lot the license plate. Match S1985, I had it. Specially requested. Linda approached. Despite her better judgment, what did you recover from inside? The detective's expression grew more sombrero. Remains were found. No blood evidence or signs of struggle that we could detect given the water damage. The only item we recovered was this, he signaled to an officer, who brought over an evidence bag containing a silver lighter. Gregory fished in his pocket and produced an identical lighter. This is mine, that one must be Brandon's. Bought them together at that shop in Miami, Christmas 1984. Eleanor's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. Detective, what does this mean if they're not in the car? Where are they? What happens now? Mrs. Whitmore, I don't believe your son and daughter-in-law would deliberately dispose of their vehicle in the Everglades, especially not a wedding gift. Somebody did this to them in 1985 and tried to eliminate evidence. This is no longer just a missing persons case. It's potentially a criminal investigation. Eleanor's hand flew to her throat. You mean someone might have killed them? We're exploring all possibilities, but whoever did this knew the area well, knew exactly where the deep water was, how to access this remote location. This suggests someone local. Gregory's face flushed red. Before you lost a taxpayer money on wild theories, you need to send divers back out there, search for bodies. They might still boinger water. Our dive teams are conducting searches as we speak, Mr. Whitmore will expand the grid pattern if necessary. Gregory turned abruptly to Daniel, his voice dropping, but still audible to those nearby. This is why it's important to never marry into desperation. Poor girls will ruin your name or destroy you, just like what happened to your brother. Dad Daniel's shock was evident. You know how much Brandon loved Melissa. She would never lend his control. Snapped. Are you still trying to blame my daughter after all these years? Gregory rounded on her. She might have had connections, old boyfriends, gang members from her neighborhood, someone who got jealous and decided to eliminate my song gang members. Linda's voice rose. If my daughter just wanted your money, she wouldn't have disappeared with your son. She would have stayed to collect it. Don't you dare. Gregory stepped forward aggressively. Your son is the one who lured her away from her purity. Promised. Linda shot back. She wanted to wait until marriage, but he convinced her otherwise. That's why they had to marry. So young Melissa was only 24. The argument escalated rapidly. Voices rising, accusations flying. Other visitors stopped to stare. Officers moved to intervene, creating a barrier between the feuding families. That's enough. Detective Prom's authoritative voice cut through the chaos. This behavior helps no one. You're both grieving, both confused. I understand that, but throwing accusations won't bring answers. He guided Linda away from the confrontation. Mrs. Carroll, please. Everyone's emotions are running high. Don't let him provoke you. He's painting my daughter as some kind of criminal, Linda said, her voice shaking with rage and unshed tears. My baby girl sang in the church choir, who volunteered at the food bank. I know we'll review everything back at station 4. Now I need you to go home and try to rest. I'll contact you immediately if there are any developments. Can you drive yourself, or would you like an officer to escort? Yolanda took several deep breaths, trying to center herself. I can drive. I just need. A moment she walked to her car on unsteady legs, slumping into the